and our topic is no surprises. But before we do, excuse me, I got to be able to see a little bit. Before we do, we have a suggestion box in the back, and people in our Live-In Center will leave suggestions in the box. And we read the suggestions in our house meeting. And so here's one of the suggestions that was in the box. And I'm still trying to figure out if this is Pastor Deborah's handwriting or not. I'm thinking it might be her handwriting. But it says, "Hi, good morning. This is for Pastor Scott. We, the residents, want to say thank you for all that you do for us. We love you, period." Okay, now that that's out of the way, they had to get that part out of the way, I guess. So now that that's out of the way, why do you pick on Pastor Deborah at service every Sunday? We love her, and she has the biggest and beautiful smile in the church. Thank you, and have a smile of a day from the residents. Wow. So I pick on her because she deserves it. Because she gives it to me all week long, and it's my only way of getting back. And I can do it because I'm in a safe zone. She can't come up here and hit me or anything. And I figured that after lunch she'll have cooled down a little bit, and maybe I can have a safe afternoon. Anyway, but today I am not going to pick on her today, just so that whoever wrote the note will know that I'm trying to change my evil ways. Okay, so we're going to jump into our text, and we're in Isaiah chapter 44, and we're starting at verse 28, and then we're going to jump into chapter 45. Now, as I read this text, we were away last week, and I was listening to a young man speak, and he quoted from this text. And when he quoted from this text, it just jumped out at me. And I couldn't stop thinking about it all week long. And I decided to share my thoughts with you. And in verse 28, it says, "Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and will accomplish all that I please." This is Isaiah prophesying. God is speaking through Isaiah, and he's prophesying. And he's prophesying this. "Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and will accomplish all that I please. He will say to Jerusalem, let it be rebuilt, and the temple, let its foundations be laid." So Isaiah is prophesying about this Cyrus coming, who will allow for the temple to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. Then we go to chapter 45, and we're going to look from verse 1 to 6. It says, "This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand take hold of to subdue nations before him, and to strip kings of their armor, to open doors before him, so that gates will not shut. And I will go before you and will level the mountains. I will break down the gates of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. For the sake of Jacob, my servant, of Israel, my chosen, I summon you by name and bestow on you a title of honor, though you do not acknowledge me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. I will strengthen you, though you have not acknowledged me. That's the second time he said that. so that from the rising of the sun to the place of its setting, men may know that there is none besides me. I am the Lord. There is no other. Well, that's an interesting text, that Isaiah is prophesying of the coming and the rulership of Cyrus, a coming king, Cyrus. And Cyrus actually ruled Persia. And he ruled Persia back around 553 to 539 BC. But here's the thing, Isaiah was not prophesying this when Cyrus was alive. He prophesied the coming of Cyrus 200 years before Cyrus was even born. Now think about that. God is saying to the nation of Israel about a man that has not even been born yet. He's telling the nation of the coming of a man and tells the nation what his name is, Cyrus. He's referred to as Cyrus the Great, by the way, in history. Isaiah is prophesying about a man that has not even been born, isn't even on the face of the earth. And God is telling them what his name is. God is telling him of what he'll conquer. God is telling the people all that he will do and how he will raise in power. And then he will set the Jews free from captivity to go rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Isaiah is telling the nation that. And he hasn't even been born. I don't know about you, but that just blows my mind. Cyrus did come to rule. He conquered Media, Lydia, Babylon, and most of the Middle East. And then did just what God said, set the Jews free to go back and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. He did everything that God said he would do. Now, why is that important to us? Why would we care? Well, it's interesting because you see in this text that God is saying that he's speaking of Cyrus before he's born as though God knows him and knows all about him and knows what he will do and what he won't do. And God is saying that I've chosen you and I've appointed you and I'm going to anoint you for the task that I've created you, actually haven't created you yet, that I am going to create you for. Something similar happens when God speaks to Jeremiah the prophet. In Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4 and verse 5, God says to Jeremiah, because Jeremiah is feeling inadequate. Jeremiah is feeling like he is not up to the task. Jeremiah is feeling like he should not be called a prophet. And God speaks to Jeremiah in chapter 1, verse 4 and 5, and he says, Jeremiah says, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I even formed you in the womb. Well, that says a number of things. That says number one, that before you were a thought in your mommy and daddy's head, before you were even a thought, God already knew you. How many thousands and thousands and billions of years before? We don't know, because eternity is a very long time. But God is saying that before you were you, I knew you. And the word knew is not the word to know of. The word knew is to know intimately. So God is saying to Jeremiah, before you were you, I knew you. I knew you intimately. I knew all about you. Everything about you, I knew before you were even you. And then he says, and then I formed you in the womb. You are not a mistake. God created you. He formed you personally in your mama's womb. You look the way you look. You have the skin tone that you have. You have the facial features that you have. You have the eye color that you have. You have the height that you have. You have all of that because God custom made you in the womb. You are not just something that happened. God custom made you in the womb. You are you because of the hand of God. You are a work of God's art. You are His art. You should look in the mirror and say, I'm pretty good looking, if you ask me. I'm God's handiwork. I'm God's art piece. I'm God's masterpiece. I should be shown in art galleries around the world. Just look at me because of the way God made me. So God knew, God created, and then God says to Jeremiah, I created you for a purpose. I created you for a purpose. So you are here today, and I'm here today with a God-given purpose. We're just not to skip through life wondering what to do, when to do it, how to do it, where to do it. We have been created with a God-given purpose. Now, your purpose might be different than my purpose, and my purpose different than their purpose, but God has created each one of us with a God-ordained divine purpose for this life. And He knows everything about you. There is nothing about you that He does not know. There are no secrets. You have no secrets with God. He knew what you would do today before you were ever born. He knew what you would do tomorrow before you were ever born. He knew all the mistakes that you would make before you were ever born. There's no surprises. God doesn't say, oh my gosh, look what they just did. Can you believe it? He knew you would do it before you did it. So everything that you've gone through in life, everything that you've experienced, all the mistakes that you've made, all of that, God knew that before you came. He knew that you would do that. He knew everything about you. It's interesting because when you look at Jesus, Jesus knew that Judas was a thief, and He knew that Judas would betray Him and sell Him out for 30 pieces, right? He knew that He would do that, but He still called Judas to follow Him. That blows my mind. If you're going to fire anybody on your team, fire Judas. Get him off the team. But no, Jesus chose Judas to follow Him, knowing he would betray Him. Jesus chose Peter to follow Him, knowing that Peter would deny Him 3 times. God chose Saul to be king, knowing that Saul would, at the latter part of his life, fail miserably. God chose David to be king, knowing that David would fail over and over and over again, but get back up and make another run for it, only to fail again. God, get back up, make another run for it. God still chose him to be king. God chose Elijah. We think of Elijah as a great man that went up against the prophets of Baal and Jezebel and everything. But when you read the end of the story, Elijah becomes scared to death, becomes depressed, and actually becomes suicidal. Mighty prophet of God goes out suicidal. He didn't commit suicide because God disrupted his plans and rescued him. But God still chose him. See, regardless of what you've gone through, regardless of what past you have, regardless of the damage done, regardless of all of that, God still chose you. You're here today because God chose you. God said to you in the midst of all of it, follow me. I choose you. I want you to follow me. Will you follow me? And we have the awesome privilege of saying, yes, I'll follow you. I don't have much to offer you. I don't have a lot of stuff to offer you. I'm kind of a screw up, if you want to know the truth. And not too many people pick screw ups to be on their team. But if you want me on your team and you accept screw ups on your team and you know all my screw ups anyway, I can't hide them from you. I can't pretend they're not there. They're right in front of you all the time. You know me. And you want me on your team? I'll say yes to that. I don't bring much to the table. I'm not offering a whole lot. But what little I have, I love the way Catherine Kuhlman put it. She made this statement repeatedly. She said, Jesus, I have nothing to give you but my love. I have nothing in myself to give you but my love. That's all I can offer you is my love. Because there's nothing in me that's very good. Nothing to offer you that you would even want. But you want my love? I'll give you my love. Because that's all I have. And then God reaches down and He accepts you. He accepts me right where we're at. In the midst of all the garbage, in the midst of the you can be in jail serving a life. I was with a pastor last week who was serving a life sentence. God reached right into that prison cell and saved him right in jail. He went to Bible college while in jail. And the warden of that jail was so amazed at the transformation in this man that the warden petitioned the courts for an early release, and they released him. Serving a life sentence, and he's in his, I would estimate, early 40s, out of prison with the rest of his life, gone into the ministry, launching a church. Amazing to me that God does that. The world won't do that. Business won't do that. They cut their losses and kick you aside, leave you kicked to the curb. They won't do that. But somehow God is invested in you even before you agree to follow Him, because He knew each and every one of you before He formed you. And He didn't form you to fail. He didn't form you to ruin your life. He didn't form you to do that. We make choices sometimes to go our own road, and that's what happens. But that's not why He formed you. So when you say, yes, I accept, He takes you and He begins to work again in your life. Amen. I can't hardly fathom that, to be honest with you. I can barely comprehend that God knew the mistakes I would make before I made them. And He knew the mess I would make of stuff before I made it. And He still says to me, follow me. It's like, seriously? You seriously want me? That's pretty awesome. You see, there are two things that God is that we can barely comprehend. God is omnipotent. He is omnipotent. That simply is the state of being, the state of being, or a force of unlimited power. He is omnipotent. There is no lack of power with God. And then second, God is omnipresent, simply meaning that He is in all places at all times. We can't comprehend it because we are neither. We are neither. But God is omnipotent and omnipresent. So, you go to work tomorrow and they tell you that you're going to be laid off or that they're going to have to let you go. And you get all shocked. God is not shocked. Before you go to the Lord in prayer, He already knew it. In fact, He knew it before you went to work that morning. He knew it before you were born that that day would happen. And He has already put something in motion before it ever happened. He's already put a plan in motion. And you see, we get so worked up over it. So I go to work and they let me go. Actually, that happened to me. The plant shut down. They closed. They went broke. They shut down. And I have a little baby in diapers. I don't know how I'm going to put diapers on his booty, and I don't know how I'm going to put food on the table. I have no idea. I'm in an absolute panic. Not thinking for a moment that God already knew that day. God already saw that day. God already had put a plan in place for that day. But I don't know that because I'm not omnipotent and I'm not omnipresent. I live only in this moment. And in this moment, I see only crisis. I'm not seeing the way God sees. All I see is the crisis of the moment. God has looked, He knew the crisis before it happened, and He's looked beyond the crisis to the solution before I ever go to Him with the crisis. It makes you wonder if we really should be complaining to God that much when He's already put a plan in motion to help us. We actually should go to God when there is a crisis in our life and begin to thank Him in advance for the plan He's put already in place. So being let go of that job and going through this crisis time in my own head, God's not in a crisis. He already knows He's got a plan laid out for me. And then eventually I step into that plan and I'm in a better place, a job that pays 8 times more than that job, and it's got a great career ahead of me and everything is wonderful. I wouldn't have gotten that job if I didn't get let go of this job. That's a whole nother message. Not every crisis in your life is a crisis. Sometimes it's actually a blessing that you don't see. Not every crisis is a crisis. Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 11. You see, when you begin to understand the greatness of God, it becomes extremely easy to trust Him. In fact, trusting Him is almost like second nature. There is no work for me to trust God when I begin to realize who God really is and that He holds my life, everything about me in the palm of His hand. There are no surprises with God. Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 11 says, through our union with Christ, we too have been claimed by God as His inheritance before we were even born. He gave us our identity that we would fulfill the plan of God who always accomplishes every purpose and plan in His heart. He always accomplishes every plan and purpose in His heart. The best thing you can do is figure out what His plan and purpose is for you and align yourself with it, knowing He will accomplish it. It's kind of like City Church. I have no fear, absolutely no fear. Deborah can say there's no money in the bank right now. You have no money. You can't pay the mortgage. And oh, by the way, the PG&E just gave us a 7-day notice. And the trash ain't being picked up. I have no fear that we will be here next week and the week following and the week following and the week following and the week following, regardless of what I see, regardless of what I'm told, because I've discovered the purpose and the plan of God. And the purpose and the plan of God for me and for City Church supersedes the circumstances. It overrides all circumstances because the circumstances are the crisis in the moment, and I don't live in the moment. I don't live where the circumstances are. I live in the realm that I know the plan and the purpose of God, And as long as I'm aligned with His plan and His purpose, all things will happen right. They'll all come out in the wash. I don't know how sometimes, but it does. I shouldn't tell you all this. It's not a financial meeting for the church, but I couldn't pay the mortgage last month. And Deborah does our books, and then we have a bookkeeping service that oversees that, so we have double accountability. But she says, honey, well, there's no money to pay the mortgage, man. You can't pay the mortgage. You're in trouble. I like that. Well, I'm not making fun of her today. I already promised. But she said, you're in trouble. It's not we're in trouble, it's you're in trouble. It's we when it's all good. But when there's trouble, it's you're in trouble. But I love you, honey. Did I tell you I love you? Did okay? Yeah, so, honey, you're in trouble. And I said, God, I see the crisis, and it's a real crisis. But I know your plan and your purpose. And I choose to stand under your plan and your purpose and let you take care of the crisis. So we're in a meeting with a bunch of gentlemen. And one of the gentlemen at the table has a check in his pocket and throws me a check and says, here. And looked at the check, and it was a check for $10,000. So I said, well, hallelujah, we just paid our mortgage and PG&E and our trash. So when you align yourself with God's purpose and stay out of the realm of crisis, God will always provide through His purpose. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 8, and this is out of the Passion Bible, says, trust in the Lord completely and do not rely on your own opinions. With all your heart, rely on Him to guide you, and He will lead you in every decision you make. Become intimate with Him in whatever you do. That is powerful to me. Become intimate with Him in whatever you do. Basically, include Him in everything you do. Become intimate with Him in everything that you do. And He will lead you wherever you go. Don't think for a minute that you know it all, for wisdom comes when you adore Him with undivided devotion and avoid everything that's wrong. Then you will find the healing and refreshment for body and spirit that you long for. Become intimate with Him. You know, again, that's easy when you understand God. You know everything about me. You know all my faults and my strength. You know everything about me. Why shouldn't I be intimate with you? Because in all of that, you love me. Jesus died for me. You invite me to follow you. You invite me to be more than a follower. You invite me to be part of the family of God, your family. That is easy to accept those invitations and become intimate. The last thing I want to show you with Cyrus is this, that God says twice to Cyrus, even though you don't acknowledge me. Cyrus was not a God follower. Cyrus was a heathen king. God is prophesying to the nation of Israel through Isaiah that in 200 years I'm going to raise up a king who's not going to follow me. But I'm going to raise him up nonetheless, and I'm going to use this king that doesn't follow me. I'm going to allow him to conquer other nations. I'm going to allow him to subdue these other nations so that in turn I'm going to use him to bless you. Wait a minute. God, you take a guy, he's not even here yet, and when he does come, He ain't going to be a good guy. He's going to be an evil guy. He's not going to follow you. He's not a God follower. He's not a Jew. He's not from it. He's a heathen king, and he's conquering these other nations and subduing them to slavery. But when it comes to your people, he's going to conquer them, subdue them, but then he's going to let them go. And that's all orchestrated by you. You know what that says to me? That says that God will take people in your life that can be your enemy and use them to bless you. Be careful how you look at people in your life. Be careful, because some people are there to bless you. You just don't even know it yet. Joseph. God makes promises to Joseph. Joseph does some crazy, stupid things, and we won't get into all that. That's a series that I want to do in a couple months. But Joseph's brothers become jealous and sell him into slavery. What a horrible thing to do. But God used Joseph's brothers to actually bless him. He gets bought by Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife makes a move on him one day. She's just nasty. She makes a move on him. While Potiphar's gone, Joseph says, not in your lifetime. It ain't going to happen, right? So Potiphar comes back, and she screams rape. And Potiphar comes back, and to save face, because he knows his wife's nasty and does stuff like that, but to look good among the other slaves and peers and stuff, because he's an officer in the Roman army, he sends Joseph to prison. Potiphar blessed Joseph. Joseph gets in prison. The baker, the cupbearer get thrown in prison because they displeased Pharaoh, and they each have a dream. Joseph interprets it, and they get released, and the baker gets beheaded, and the cupbearer is restored to his position. But he forgot about Joseph, and he made a promise that when I get out, I'll tell Pharaoh about you and get you out. But he forgets about him. That's what people do. They forget about you. And they go on with life until Pharaoh has a dream. Then he remembers Joseph. And he says to Pharaoh, there's a guy in prison that can decipher your dream. The cupbearer, God uses the cupbearer to bless Joseph. And finally, God uses Pharaoh to bless Joseph. And Joseph is brought out of prison to rule the nation under Pharaoh, second in command under Pharaoh, and actually make sure that his whole family is fed throughout this drought and this famine that is happening. Amazing. Amazing. Every person that came into Joseph's life that you would think were there to destroy him, God actually uses to bless him. God actually uses them to bless him. So that nasty neighbor of yours, that person at work that you just can't stand and you'd love to just go cut their tires in the parking lot one day, they drive you absolutely nuts. The people that you associate with that you wish you didn't have to, be careful, because some of them are placed in your life to bless you. You just don't know it. They're there to bless you. In fact, this morning I was finished up and I felt the Lord whisper something to me, and I wrote it down in my notes. We limit God by trying to limit those He wants to use. We limit God by trying to limit those that He wants to use. People that you may think want to hurt you are sometimes the very people that are placed in your life to bless you. I've come to a place where everybody that I run across, good, bad, and indifferent, I have to ask myself, are you actually here to bless me? Is God going to use you to bless me somehow? I just don't see it right now, but it's going to happen. Because some people that I would think were there to bring harm are actually God's going to use them to bless me. In fact, sometimes He will use them to bless me. They don't even know that they've been used to bless me. Because God doesn't always tell people that are evil that He's using them to bless me. He just uses them. See, that changes the whole dynamics of people that are coming and going in my life. Because I look at people differently. I don't look at what I can extract out of them, but I look at how God may use them to bless me. I was having to make a decision yesterday. Actually, it stemmed from the day before. And it was a delicate situation. And I was really wrestling with how to phrase it. And I happened to be on the phone call with somebody, and they said something in that conversation. They said something in the conversation that when I hung up the phone, I went, oh my gosh, that's what I should say in response in this situation. Exactly what they told me. See, God used them without them even knowing it to tell me something that I had just asked God to reveal to me. And they didn't know that God used them in the conversation we were having, which wasn't exactly the same. They said something that when I hung the phone up, it went bing. God just said, see, I just answered your prayer. Use what they said. That's what you should say. God will use people. But you have to recognize it and know that He's going to use people to bless you. Why? Because you live under His divine purpose and plan. And as long as you live under God's divine purpose and plan, nothing can get in the way of God accomplishing what He said. Nothing. We've had instances at this church where people have come and meant to do us bad. And it's only turned out to do us well and to cause growth. Go figure that out. God used their evilness to turn around and bring blessing and growth. That's amazing to me. Because as long as we're under the divine purpose and plan of God, God will use everybody around you and situations and circumstances to bring blessing, to further His plan and what He's doing in your life. So you may be here this morning and you know that you're following Jesus, and you know that He has a plan for your life and He has a purpose for your life. My suggestion, if you don't know what that is to begin to ask God, what is the plan and purpose for my life? And as you know it, you'll see God begin to line things up to bring about exactly what He's planned and purposed for your life. And then you can walk in confidence and know that nothing but nothing can stop it. Amen?